back to GoT Perspectives, or Game of Thrones Perspectives. I'm your host, Burke, and I got with me Alex. This is episode 2, which we will be going in depth a little bit into season 2, as well as some residual stuff from season 1. Now, last episode I said we were going to shoot for, 30 minutes. It turned into 45 minutes, so honestly, if you want to stick around for the whole thing, we're just going to talk until we feel like we've covered each season and its subsequent, fulfillment of previous plot points from any given season, and just kind of enjoy chatting about a show that we loved and we love to hate and all those good things. Yeah. So, Alex, as we're going into season 2, the board is set, dragons have been reborn with Daenerys off in the Far East, and it ends with this comet that is supposed to signify the birth of dragons, or it signifies a lot to whoever is looking at it.
And there's quite a few looking.
There's a lot of different people seeing it, and one such faction is you got Stannis Baratheon with the Red Witch Melisandre, and Melisandre is big into the prophecy of Azor Ahai, which is the hero who originally defeated the White Walkers, or by legend, ended the Long Night.
The chosen one. There's always an aspect in stories of the one, or our protagonist, or in Azor Ahai, that's Martin's answer to a chosen one.
Well, it's his answer, but also and we can talk about this in later episodes, as that the vision of who Azor Ahai is becomes more clear and also more muddled by the show itself.
Yeah. It's very not clear in the books.
It's very not clear in the books either. Prophecy is always this two-edged sword with Martin that it's never clear. It's always going to end up being something that you don't expect.
Yeah, but for the sake of the show, Melisandre sees this and it basically confirms to her that yes, Stannis is this.
For this time being, Stannis is the person who has been chosen by R'hllor, the Lord of Light, to lead the Seven Kingdoms against the darkness. And when we first meet them, they are burning the idols, the statues of the seven. When we get to later in the Sept of Baelor, and you see the inside of that, you see these massive statues of the 7 aspects of God in the seven.
The religion of the seven.
They are burning all of those on a beach, and then you have Maester Cresson was his name, was the character, and he's coming, and he's just against that, because most Maesters also are very loyal to that faith.
Right.
And he's just objecting to this, and we meet one of my personal favorite characters from Stannis' camp, which is Davos Seaworth. Always the best skeptic, always just everybody's favorite uncle, grandpa, whatever you want to call him.
The best skeptic who cannot read.
Right, until he can.
And we're so thankful that he had that interaction with Stannis' daughter, because Stannis wasn't having the interaction with
No,
his daughter.
seriously.
Come on.
Gosh.
But Davos is such a kind soul.
Davos was the best grandpa that Shireen Baratheon could have asked for.
Yeah,
but we'll get to her in season 3.
We love Davos.
But Davos is the best. Creston is just interesting because the book, the actual Clash of Kings book, opens with that scene. It's kind of the same thing as the cold open from season 1, where you have the Night's Watchman going north of the Wall. The book actually opens with that. If I recall, it's not the first scene in season 2. But it opens with that, and then you get to the scene where he tries to poison Melisandre, and she drinks it willingly after he has taken a sip, because he's doing that thing where he's going to sacrifice his life to take out this person who he thinks is absolutely evil. And she drinks it willingly, already knowing it's poisoned, and the poison does nothing to her.
Just kind of sets the scene for Melisandre.
It sets up Melisandre as just this anomaly where you're just like, she's the only thing so far besides just dragons.
Sure.
Where all of a sudden we actually think there's something to her.
This representation of magic in the world. Well, dragons and White Walkers, right? Or
dragons and White Walkers.
Right. And now we have a human who's doing some seriously sketchy stuff. and it's working.
Exactly.
And we're like, okay, so we're going to be watching Melisandre very closely from this point forward. And what's her whole thing with Stannis? That's a whole other thing. The audience is like, okay, so what is she getting out of this? Because clearly there's something, right?
Well, so from what I can tell, the thing that they were trying to get at, and some of the priests, when you actually get into the story behind some of the Red Priests who came to Westeros to, first off, convert Robert Baratheon originally from the Faith of the Seven to the Lord of Light. You had Thoros of Myr, which we don't really get much of him until next season.
Love Thoros, but we'll talk about him later.
We'll talk about him later. Love Thoros. But that was the whole thing. Is you had all these Red Priests being sent to try and convert Robert Baratheon, and one of them worked on Stannis. And thankfully for her cause, by all means, if everybody believes the lie or true, which we know it's the truth about Joffrey and Tommen and Marcella Baratheon, is that they are not actually Baratheons.
Right. And the population of King's Landing is kind of split on, well, either Stannis just wants, to have the throne for himself, and he's trying to discredit, the Joffrey and his siblings, and then you have the great lie of, oh no, he's telling the truth, and he's trying to help us all, and so you really do have the capital in turmoil. Under Joffrey's rule, it's always in turmoil.
Well, yeah, because Joffrey, it's so funny to me when you look at the scene where he beheads Ned, and he just whips that crowd into a frenzy. They're so happy to kill Ned. But then as the time goes on and they start to realize what kind of king Joffrey is, the masses kind of start to dislike Joffrey, which, by all means, they have a right.
So many rights.
They have a right to do that. We'll get to their riot here in a little bit, but one character we really didn't talk about who gets to shine a lot this season, even more than he did, just because he was witty more so in the first season. He had little things where he was able to get out of some scrapes because he was just smarter than the people in the room.
He's quite the biggest little thing you can say.
Exactly. So we have to talk about Tyrion Lannister, played by the marvelous Peter Dinklage.
Oh, thank you.
Seriously, we get to talk more about him throughout this time, but seriously, he shines so much in season 2, especially because he is sent by his father, Tywin Lannister, to be the Hand of the King, which is a huge responsibility. And from what you had known of the relationship between Tywin and Tyrion leading up to that moment where he sends him to King's Landing, it's crazy to think that he trusted Tyrion with this. And it just kind of adds to this weird dynamic of, does Tywin think that he's his son or does he not think that he's his son? Because he's always playing that line between I don't want to believe you're my son.
Yeah, Tywin's he's always stuck between, I really wish he wasn't my son, and that questioning of, is he my son? But the legitimacy of Tyrion is that all these years he was raised as a Lannister, so he will act as a Lannister is. And for this particular moment in time, Tywin needs him for something.
Oh,
so
absolutely.
Of course he's a Lannister. Of course he's my son. He's the Hand of the King. And because
obviously at the time that he sends Tyrion to King's Landing, Jaime has been captured.
Yep.
Tywin is going to focus on getting Jaime out of the Starks' grasp, and he's going to focus on winning the war against the Starks at this point.
Right.
Because he knows from where he was at in season 1, he has Renly Baratheon at his backside and Stannis Baratheon coming from him from the south, and then you have the Starks coming at him from the north. And
go, Rob, go!
Go, Rob, go! But Tyrion gets to shine. From the moment he sets foot in King's Landing, he's becoming this force from my perspective, for good. He is doing things for the best interests of the people as well as for himself in ways.
No, he is. I think what's really interesting about the position of Hand of the King in season 2 is that we really see a flip of that. Ned could never do anything. He was always stuck in bureaucracy, Hand of the King is something you can just throw on the ground and walk away from. Tyrion turns that role into this powerhouse. He checks Cersei's power. He slaps. Does he slap Joffrey at this point during one of the things?
He slapped him in episode 2.
Yeah, but like as Hand of the King, he gave this boy a hand.
The only time I remember him slapping him in this particular season was actually after the riot.
Right. He literally takes the power of Hand of the King and smacks it across Joffrey's stupid face, which the absolute powerhouse that Tyrion was as Hand of the King was entirely... He made his own.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, he made his own.
Well, that just speaks to Tyrion is not afraid to play dirty. No. I mean, this is the guy who made a joke at Lysa Arryn's expense by making a fool of her by telling a story about him masturbating into a pot of turtle soup that his sister then ate. The dude does not care to be dirty, crass, whatever it is that makes him come out on top.
Right. We have to thank someone though for his continued journey up to that point.
Oh, absolutely. We'll get to Bronn.
Okay.
We'll get to
Bronn because
Sir Bronn of the Blackwater, as we
there is no Force of Tyrion without Bronn.
No, for sure. Tyrion wouldn't have even made it out of the Vale if it weren't for Bronn.
He makes it through a lot of stuff because of Bronn.
But just to say that Tyrion is a different man than Ned Stark. Right. Ned Stark's not gonna play the games that these High Lords play.
He lost the game, you could say.
He lost the game because, you play the Game of Thrones, you win or you die.
Right.
There's no middle ground.
None.
But so Tyrion's not afraid to do what he needs to win.
He understands.
And that's the cool thing is, he walks into King's Landing with this entourage of Bronn and all the mountain men that he had befriended in the Vale. Which just automatically, I love it even more so in the books because it actually kind of describes what some of these people are off doing in the city and just in the camps when they're, back with the Lannister army in the first book and first season.
Right.
Just, they are getting up to so many shenanigans and all that stuff. But it's so great.
Royals.
But I love the scene where he comes into King's Landing the first time. And obviously he's on business. He's here to be serious about this position he's gotten. And it's Joffrey's birthday.
Right.
And they're doing this whole, let's have a bunch of guys kill each other for Joffrey's birthday. It's like, cool, you've got expendable soldiers apparently.
So cruel.
What is wrong with you?
So
and then Tyrion comes in and he is immediately doing all these things that Joffrey doesn't think are right by his recollection. He sees Sansa and he says, "My lady, I'm sorry about your father." And it's like, don't be sorry. He was a traitor and also her father. Show some, courtesy, respect for somebody who just lost theirs, having just lost yours recently. Just putting Joffrey in his place because he can. He has to be a little bit more careful going forward after this season because, he can't get away with that as much. But he puts him in his place where he needs to. I have always found it so brilliant the way he figures out who Cersei's mole is on the small council. I love that scene. It is so reminiscent of just how politics is all this he said, she said, and if word gets back to somebody, you need to know who you can't trust.
And Baylor set our expectations in the season when he's like, see those people over there, those are my spies. See those people over there, those are Varys' spies, right? And it's very clear. King's Landing is a political atmosphere of I know so much, you know so much, who wins.
It's all about information, which Baelish has a good scene with Cersei, actually, about
I love that scene.
The whole information is power, and then she's like, arrest him, slit his throat, no, never mind, I've changed my mind, turn around, close your eyes, and she just comes up to him, and power is power.
Yeah.
It's so interesting because they're both right in a way. They're both right. But in that moment, he shouldn't have talked shit about the fact that
he overstepped his bounds.
He overstepped just a bit when he implied that, I have information about Joffrey and Jaime and all these other things, and whoever believes knowledge.
He's saying this to the current, which it's the king's mother, like her new title.
The Queen Regent.
Yeah, the Queen Regent. He's saying it to the Queen Regent, who's surrounded by 4 of her personal guards, and
which
there's no.
They're Lannister.
They're Lannister. They're not even just like the King's guards.
Yeah,
they're the Lannister guards, and he's gonna walk up.
You're gonna talk shit to a Lannister
the master
while she has Lannisters around her.
Yeah.
Like, why would you do that?
That shuts him up for a while, I think, when it comes to like straight up insulting people. I don't know if I see it again, like straight up like that.
He does it, but never to people as high
Not
up.
to that level.
He doesn't do it to people who are able to kill him in an instant.
He learns. He takes information from that interaction and changes his behavior accordingly and survives quite a while, much like she does.
But back to the Tyrion so his whole plot centers around marrying off Marcella Baratheon to gain an alliance of some random kingdom just to say, hey, we are facing a war on 2 fronts. We need allies. So let's marry her off. And, he says, I'm going to marry her off to the Robin Arryn of the Vale, to Baelish. And he's like, you have a relationship with her, so get close to her. Let's do that. He says to Varys, he's going to marry her to Theon Greyjoy, who he now, at that point, knows went back to the Iron Islands through whatever their network of spies. And then he tells Pycelle. He tells Pycelle that he's going to marry her off to the Prince of Dorne.
Right.
And I love the scene where he busts down Pycelle's door as he's with a whore, mind you. The maesters are not. They're supposed to be like the Night's Watch.
Pycelle's one of the worst ones. Let's be clear.
He is, and he's the Grand Maester.
He's the Grand.
He's like the guy.
Great scene.
Such a great scene, and it was Varys. Never trust a eunuch, and it's like I told Varys I was marrying her to Theon Greyjoy. Baelish. Like he's throwing out every option. It's like, no, dude, you're caught.
Told 3 people.
You're caught.
You're the one that told.
So yeah.
Yeah, and then Cersei bursts in like, "You're gonna marry her to I know who it is now."
Yeah.
He's like, yeah.
Yeah, I love that scene so much because it's just so subtle. The way he's just like, "What have you heard? What do you know? Tell me." And then I just wish they had a little bit more of like that realization in his eyes of just, but obviously you need that subtlety.
Yeah.
Where it's
and that actually turns out to be the one that they go with as well. And
well, no, that's the reason.
Yeah.
That's the reason he went with it is because now
that's a reasonable request for him to make.
Now that is the public information, that's what we'll go with.
Right. Yeah. Oh, she could have ended up in some weird places, but that's the best one, honestly.
I mean, is it?
Yeah.
Is it?
I mean, well, let's see. What, Theon? And then what?
Maybe if Theon had a nice princess to settle down with, maybe.
Why do you know? Come on. Theon, and then the other one was Dorne, and then
Robin Arryn. Which, Robin Arryn's just...
at the moon door. I can't, I'm sorry. No, I mean, yeah, and none of those end well. I'll say that. But at least she was in love with the one they chose.
No, she actually fell in love with the person that... Yeah, we'll get there.
We will.
I
love
Let's go to Theon really quick. Theon, it's interesting.
He gets some confidence.
He gets some really bad confidence.
Oh, yeah. He's groping his sister.
Yeah, wow. Gosh, I actually had erased that from my mind, which is amazing.
Well, it's funny because he did that after he whored on the boat on the way there.
Can I just say I love that interaction where he's taking a boat to the Iron Islands and he sleeps with the captain's daughter, takes her virginity, like straight up. Takes her virginity.
Straight up.
Talks about like how Ironborn would take like salt wives. Like that whole interaction is just so ridiculous.
So weird.
And she's like begging for it. She's like, I want to be your salt wife or whatever. Take me.
Never see her again.
Yeah, we never see her again. Her dad was probably ashamed of her and threw her overboard for being a whore.
It was probably terrible. It was probably interaction there. And then he gets to the actual Iron Islands.
Yeah, he gets there.
Why they send his sister, I have no idea. They could have sent anyone, but she wanted to greet him. And,
I don't even know if somebody actually sent her or if she just knew he was coming. coming because of spies or other things.
Brother-sister bond. She knows he's coming.
I wouldn't say because of that. I would at least say it's a story reason, not like a
I would hope.
telepathy.
But then she doesn't clue him in.
It's just funny because he shows up and, he talks to this random old dude and he's just like, where's the entourage and blah, 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 I'm coming home. Actually, now that I think about it, I bet that's what it was. He sent like a letter that he was coming home or something.
Maybe, yeah. Well, he wants to talk about, them teaming up with...
yeah, he wanted to get them to join
because he had such good intentions coming here. Such good intentions.
Yeah, maybe he should not be such a shitty person.
He's a terrible person.
He's such a terrible
Early
person.
on, there's no love for him.
Like, first season, he has moments of, like, he's just shitty, and, like, he's punching down at Jon Snow.
I get why he's shitty. He was left after a failed raid, and they took care of him, which they shouldn't have.
No, Alex, it wasn't even that he was left. It was that his father starts a rebellion against Robert Baratheon.
Oh wait, right.
And they go like
books,
all the kingdoms,
books.
Well, books and just lore in general.
Yeah, in general.
But they go to Pike and they destroy the Greyjoys completely. Like, they don't rebel again until this, which, now is the perfect time to rebel because you have 4 kings vying for power in some way, shape, or form. So why not just add another to the mix,
Yeah.
But so they destroy the Greyjoys in that rebellion. And with that, Theon is the only of his father's, I believe it was 3 sons,
that remains alive.
That was alive. Right. And to make sure that he doesn't rebel again, they take Theon as a prisoner, and he's raised as Ned Stark's ward, which Ned Stark tries to raise him to be an honorable young man so that when the time comes that Balon dies, he can send Theon back to be a better lord than his father.
Yeah, that was a great plan.
It was a totally great plan. Bad it did not work at all.
Nope, Nanny grew up his sister.
Yeah, and then So Alex wants to talk about the sister groping, so let's talk about the sister groping.
I think
it's obnoxious because it's Theon being...
It's Theon.
It's being too confident in that...
I'm Ironborn. I'm the son of, just shut up.
Like, shut up.
We didn't care about this when you were in the north. We don't care about this now that you're on the Iron Islands. And then he pulls out the worst thing that he does has nothing to do with any of this. I'm building up to the worst thing he does, is when he completely, and I mean totally, betrays Robb Stark.
Yes.
His friend, his brother, the guy who actually cared about him in the household.
Straight up.
That he respected. He just says, oh, my dad.
Because that's the other thing, is Robb, when he sends Theon, Robb trusts Theon with his life, and even Cat Stark is like, why would you trust Balon Greyjoy to uphold anything with us? Why would you?
Yeah, and I think it's a letter that Robb gets where that the Ironborn are now attacking and have taken, and Robb reads that letter, right? Like Robb knows about this betrayal, right?
Yeah, straight up.
Yeah,
especially once Winterfell is taken. That's the thing.
Yeah.
And he's like, Theon spends some time back at home, and I really like the contrast of the cultures here, because obviously with Game of Thrones and the way everything's cast, everybody's a white actor, but they do such a good job of making the differences between these cultures that are all in the same areas.
Yeah, the
northern areas, but they make them stand out.
The houses stand out very specifically. Yeah,
well, the houses and the people that they rule over.
Right.
Because Ironborn, it's not just Greyjoys.
No, of course.
There's all the different houses in the Iron Islands. Right. But their whole thing with their people is they're a sea people. They do not sow. That's the thing. We raid. We take what is ours. We pay the iron price. Right. I love that scene. I love, did you pay the gold price or the iron price for that trinket you wear around your neck? I love that scene. But we find out what kind of a person Balon Greyjoy is, even more so than we had already heard. He's a miserable old man who doesn't even fight his own battles.
I mean, he embodies the idea of attacking and taking. I mean, he embodies the Iron Islands. I don't think he can be that likable.
No.
But he is who
he embodies
is.
the character of the Iron Islands,
Yeah.
what they stood for.
This old, traditional, stick to our word, stick to our motto, the iron price, right? And he doesn't delineate from that even when his son asks for aid, right?
Mm-hmm.
When he says, this is a good idea, and this is what we can get from it. No. We're the Greyjoys.
No, because he also just thinks that
Ironborn.
he's just a puppet at that point. He doesn't think that he's even saying his own words. He doesn't actually, which by all means, Theon doesn't know who he is.
No.
At this point, Theon does not know who he is. And so, yeah, he is saying the words that Robb Stark put into his head.
Yeah, and they're good words.
And
I'm sorry.
they are good words. Like, legitimately, if the Greyjoys had joined with the Starks, you have another thing there. You can help take Casterly Rock from Tywin even better, because now you have a sea raid that can help make sure his navy doesn't bother anybody, and they can't reinforce King's Landing in any way, shape, or form. All that good stuff. So they're good words. The Lannisters could have been definitely toppled this season if not for the pride of a bunch of people. So let's kind of go back to Stannis, but then not just Stannis. Let's go to Renly. Renly, the person who I actually really liked.
I do like Renly.
I don't dislike Renly. I think that his mentality about becoming king was a little skewed, but at least he's loved by people. In the books, it talks about how he has 100,000 men when he is that whole army, and where they're play fighting, and Catelyn shows up, and that's when he knights Brienne of Tarth as one of his Kingsguard.
Not only to speak to how much people love Renly, but also the bride he chooses. Right.
He chose Marjorie Tyrell,
Yeah.
which the Tyrells are the second richest family in Westeros.
Right.
Natalie
don't like that.
Natalie Dormer did a fantastic job as
Shout out to Natalie
Marjorie.
Dormer, dude. Wow.
Because in the books she's obviously 13 at the time. She's a young,
Very young.
she's very young. And in the books it is also implied that she's not as worldly as Marjorie Tyrell in the show is.
Right.
Marjorie Tyrell in the show knows how to play the game. Yep. She knows that she
Same level as Tyrion, I would even say.
Not quite Tyrion. I think he's just a little bit better at it, just because with his...
I think because of his position, he's better at it.
Yes. But no, she's
when
very...
she gets to a position like that... Well, we'll just talk about that other season, can't we?
Yeah, no worries. But no, I think she's very good at playing the game.
It's a very sharp contrast when we have the characters who are politically wise, are fighting wise. It's very sharp contrast.
I love her wisdom, because obviously she knows Renly's gay. Mm-hmm. She knows that he's boinking her brother, and that's fine. She doesn't even care. The only thing that she's like, it's important. You have not slept with me, and your soldiers know it. You have not slept with me for our wedding night yet. And, I'll do whatever it takes for you to get that done so we can have an heir.
Right.
That's all that matters at this point. Right. You need to make sure your line is secure for if and when you die.
Yeah, she really takes the emotion out of it. She just says, this is what we need to get to. And
I'll turn around and you can pretend I'm my brother.
Yeah.
Straight up, I love that. I love that because she's just to the point. She gets the point of their society. Is that, you need to have a baby with me. I don't care that you're gay. I don't care that you're doing it with my brother. But we need to have a child. Right. Otherwise, people will think you're...
Then they'll start questioning, and that's when we start to lose our power.
Exactly.
Right.
So I honestly love the little bit of their relationship that we get. But it seems sad on his end, because when she makes it clear that, hey, you can pretend that I'm my brother, I'll just turn around for you, he seems so taken aback, offended by it, because he's still, by Westerosi standards, he's in the closet still. He's trying his hardest to make it seem like he's not what everybody already kind of knows he is. Baelish makes the joke back in season 1. When will you be having your friend after Loras Tyrell defeats the Mountain? When will you be having your friend? Everybody knows.
Right.
He's not good at hiding it.
No. Well, because, he's a Tyrell. They wear the
No, he's a Baratheon.
Or,
That's what
excuse me,
about,
you're talking about Renly.
We're talking about Renly still.
Yes, but Renly is...
He's not like the Baratheons that his brothers were.
I mean,
he wears his heart on his sleeve, absolutely.
Yes. Right.
Stannis does not.
Stannis
doesn't have a heart. He has a flaming heart on his banners.
He's a cold...
He burned his heart.
He's a very cold man. He's a very cold man. But yeah.
I do love when Catelyn is at the meeting and Renly's just memeing on Stannis. Born amidst salt and smoke, is he a ham? I love him memeing on his brother and just reminding him, like, nobody wants you for a king. Nobody loves you the way that they love me.
No, they don't.
And by all means, like, I don't care that there was the conflict between them, but in those moments, and hindsight for them was 2020, but most of them were dead by the time they could have even thought about this. But it's like, you have the Lannisters. The Lannisters are the shit. Because they literally have paid off everybody. They outspend everybody to make sure that they always have a foothold in Westerosi politics. Right. I think in the moment for season 2, if every single one of the lords who is now quarreling amongst themselves had just said, hey, we don't agree on who should be king at any of this moment. But can we agree? Fuck Tywin Lannister.
Yeah, no, we absolutely...
Get him out! Get him out! And then after that, let's just go about it and we'll figure out who we want to rule the 6 or 7 or individual kingdoms. I don't care.
And I mean, let's be clear. It really could have been that if Renly had gotten off his high horse and he was on the high horse with Stannis, and if he would have agreed to work with Robb Stark, right? Those 3. It would have been over.
It would have been over.
It would have been done.
Tywin would be done.
But the problem, it's not even Stannis. It is Stannis. It's Stannis and Melisandre. They started everything falling
this
apart.
whole hitch into the plan by birthing that shadow baby, and that's another moment of magic we get after Melisandre's poisoning. Is then after she has a very sexual encounter with Stannis. So many table pieces thrown on the ground after.
So much going on.
But she gets pregnant, quote unquote.
Very weird magic, but yeah.
So weird.
Go
She's
for it.
pregnant and immediately gives birth like an episode later.
To a fucking dark,
shadow baby
assassin with Stannis' face.
Poor Brienne, man.
And that's the fall of Renly. And that's the end of...
Because that's the other thing, is like, that came at the moment where Renly is willing to work with Robb.
Right.
He's like, you really feel, like, obviously in that moment, as a Robb Stark fanboy, at the beginning of Game of Thrones, you're thinking, oh my gosh, thank God. Renly's going to take King's Landing, and Robb's going to do that. And
reinforce him, yeah.
Yep. And then Game of Thrones pulls a Game of Thrones and kills a very likable character.
Yeah.
Whose only crime was just...
I think one of the first biggest deaths in the beginning of the series, really.
I mean, in season 2, I wouldn't say in the beginning of the series.
No, but like
plenty of big deaths already at this point.
But like, for someone that was so built up that we all were like assuming had a very good chance at the throne, like actually had a chance, right? Who was making the correct decisions, who was playing the game well, magic comes in and takes it all away. And it just, I think it goes to show
Renly's gonna be king, not bullshit. Magic bullshit.
Then I think what's interesting is that, and we'll talk about this more in season 3, but then all of our hopes and dreams shift to the other Baratheon brother, because all of Renly's, bannermen, they go to Stannis' side.
They do and they don't. It's because obviously on the Lannister side, by this point, and I mean, I'm sure you felt the same way, even though he was a Lannister, we're rooting for Tyrion.
Yes, we are.
We are rooting for Tyrion.
Tyrion specifically.
No, specifically Tyrion.
I don't like who's on the throne.
We're not rooting for Joffrey.
I don't like
rooting
Cersei.
For Cersei.
Tom and they're fine.
Kids. They're fine.
We don't care. We hope they're safe. Not like the other kids the last time.
Gosh,
that there was an uprising in the capital.
Yeah.
Books.
I was gonna say, Also, can I just talk about I want to believe that in the filmmaking of the scene I'm about to talk about, that they were inspired by the Prince of Egypt. Like the actual movie, The Prince of Egypt.
Yeah.
Because when the order goes out for all of the King's Guard and the City Watch to go and find all of Robert Baratheon's bastards and kill them, it seriously just reminds me of the scene in The Prince of Egypt at the beginning, and also in the dream sequence that Moses has where he sees the paintings of all the Egyptians going and finding the Hebrews and just throwing all the babies to the crocodiles.
Yeah.
Like,
Horror.
shit terrified me in the movie.
Yeah, fuck.
And so it felt like that, where you have like them just taking kids, throwing them into the river, and then like when they're trying to get back up, just drowning them.
Yeah. Just watching all those bundles of joy fall.
Horrid. And then like you think that it's Cersei just being petty,
No.
and then when Tyrion finds out, like, oh my god, it was Joffrey, straight up, like, is this on the Queen's orders? No, this comes from somebody higher than the Queen.
Yeah, dude, Cersei was also unhappy with all of this.
Yeah.
She was like, what are you doing? And he's like, Mother, I don't care.
Yeah.
It's
when
good.
she slaps him in the throne room, and everybody who's obviously like tearing down all of Robert Baratheon's,
okay,
we're redecorating here, and he just turns to her and you will never do that to me again. Like, for once I was actually scared for Cersei's life.
Yeah. One and only time.
Like, yeah, one of the only times, because it's like, oh god, if there's no Cersei left to try and keep him in check, like, what happens to this kid?
Now, remind me, and this is something I'm just genuinely forgetting.
No, that's okay.
The Tyrells, when Renly,
when Renly dies,
they move.
Baelish was in the camp,
Right.
if you recall.
No, yeah.
Okay.
I'm saying, where do the Tyrells go? They decide to aid the
Tywin.
the Lannisters.
Yeah, they help break the siege at Blackwater.
Sorry, Stannis.
Because that was the thing, is that Stannis got most of Renly's
Right,
forces
but I was
after
gonna say
he died.
the Tyrells.
The
didn't
Tyrells,
go,
no.
didn't back him.
Nope.
No, they chose the Lannisters. They chose the rich folk to go back to.
Because that was the whole thing, is, you know, Marjorie's in there with Renly's body, and Baelish is in there, and you want to be a queen, and she's like, no, I want to be the queen. And so that's what kind of makes this alliance between the Tyrells and Lannisters.
Well, only if Sansa wasn't marrying Joffrey, you know?
Yeah, and then they go through their whole
We'll get to
religious rig. Well, we can get there now.
Oh.
Like they go through the religious rigmarole. That happens in like episode 10.
It's at the end of the season.
Yeah, it's at the very end of the season because it's after Blackwater, and we'll just need to talk about Blackwater as a whole in itself. We'll get there, folks. We know.
Blackwater's coming.
Blackwater is coming. With the breaking of the siege, though, you have the whole ceremony with Tywin, and, you know, thank you, you're now hand of the king. Tyrion's mending. Right. And then Marjorie's there. She presents herself, and I've admired you from afar, and, you know, the whole make him feel good, stroke his ego a little bit.
She knows how to play the game!
And then it's like, but my heart is promised to another, and Joffrey's just been doing this whole thing where, like, sometimes he's a little bit nice to Sansa, and other times he's just beating her or making her feel awful about the fact that she's a Stark and that her dad was a traitor.
No, because your dad had a pike.
Yeah.
He's
Like,
not a pike.
oh,
You
God.
push him in the frickin' hole!
Seriously, that moment in my eyes would have redeemed Sansa so much if she had just gone through with it. Because that moment where she could have just pushed Joffrey off a freaking cliff would have been awesome.
Yeah.
Would have been so cool. Worth dying for. Straight up. They probably would have done awful things to her. Cersei probably would have, you know, done horrid things to her for killing her
At
baby
least
boy.
Tommen's king's there now.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
We could talk about the alternate histories forever, but
Yeah.
let's, you know, breaking of the siege, right?
Yeah, breaking up the siege. Marjorie does that.
Then this is Joffrey's actually kind of his mistake. He then wants to spurn Sansa even more by taking Marjorie, and then Sansa ends up being Tyrion's.
Yeah, but that's not Joffrey's fault. That was a whole other thing that we get into
This is
season 3. No, season 3 is where that one comes in. So that's fun. Let's talk about Blackwater. let's go ahead and just talk about Blackwater. So after Renly has died, Stannis gets most of Renly's forces, and he's got this whole armada of ships that is coming to Blackwater. Tyrion, on the sidelines, has been making all these plans to try and defend the city. Cersei's making her own plans to defend the city. Everybody's making their own plans for how to either defend or attack King's Landing. And it leads to one of the really good battle scenes of the show's history, because it's just so fantastic. It actually is really, because like we've heard bits and pieces of people whistling their rendition of the Lannister song, right? The Rains of Castamere. Yeah. What a amazing song for a lot of reasons.
You know, I'm not a huge fan of that song, but you know why. And we'll get to that.
Well, yeah, we'll get there.
But
yes. What a song! And its humble beginnings are more so in season 2 with people whistling or singing it. And I love that the Bronn is in a tavern with a bunch of Lannister soldiers, and they're singing, you know, the Rains of Castamere. And Bronn and the Hound have their own little spits and spats.
Great moment.
I love it. I love them just being the people that they are. Bronn a mercenary, and the Hound just being who he is. Yeah. And then we get to their one last drink before the war, and then the bells are ringing, and yada yada. All this awesome stuff is happening to get us set for what is going to be a really fun siege. Right. And it opens in a way that Stannis is not expecting in any way, shape, or form. Before he's even landed any of his troops on the shore, Tyrion, being the awesome tactician he is, at this point in the story, we'll get to where he takes some dum-dum pills. But seriously, I love how he's waiting for Stannis' fleet to get just inside the bay. And Joffrey's confused. He's like, where are our ships? Why is nobody on our ships going to attack or anything like that? It's like, Joffrey, you are here as a showpiece. You are literally the king on the chessboard. If you fall, whatever. We're dead.
It's over.
It's over. So just shut up, let your rooks and your pawns and everybody else take care of things.
Go to your tower, dude.
Well, don't go to your tower, because...
Well, he does.
He does!
Doesn't he?
He does. So there's this whole thing where there's only one ship being sent against them, and it's just this really tense moment, and Davos is on the Vanguard ship. Like, he's on the main ship heading towards the bay. And he, being the seafarer that he is, starts to notice that the ship that is now sailing in between all of them, that has nobody on it, it's leaking something green. And he knows immediately. And you have Bronn on an outcropping somewhere, ready for a signal. And Tyrion's just on the wall, hold, until a certain point, he drops a torch over the wall. Bronn sees this, gets his arrow ready, and he fires a single fire arrow into the midst of these ships and lights the green liquid on fire. And at this point, we know it was wildfire because we've been watching, we've been watching Tyrion work with like the pyromancer and all these things. And I love that he comes back and he's like he's on the wall and he's this creepy old man and he's just watching, his creation do its work.
A lot of his creation.
Because like all of it he was making originally for Cersei, and by Tyrion's estimate, he said the whole of everything that was in that room could have blown up King's Landing itself.
Right.
So thank God he took it and, emptied a bunch of it out into the bay rather than burning King's Landing down.
A small detail, and it is one that we have to, Davos loses his son.
Yeah, so that's the thing, so he screams at Mathis, who is just watching, it's a pretty, green fire down the bay, and then it reaches the ship that is loaded with more of the stuff, And he is one of the first casualties because he's so close to the epicenter.
You just watched this entire armada that Stannis has gotten together.
I
he was
love
so proud
the
of.
shot. It's so well and like it's so well lit the way that it looks. And obviously it's done in CGI. It has to be.
No, absolutely.
Because the way that the ships just the physics on it all look great. It looks amazing. Green fire. Oh. You watch Davos just being blown back off the ship. Thank God he survives this. We don't find out until next episode that he survives it. For some reason, when I first watched the series, which by this point it was up to season 5 about to start, but when I watched the series all the way through, I took a break after this battle. Don't even know why. I just did. And so it always felt to me like Davos was dead or like just missing for a while longer. And then like I realized upon further rewatches, it's like, no, he's fine by the next episode. It's whatever. But oh my gosh, what a scene! Yeah. What a set piece right there in that moment.
And then you come back to Stannis, and it's like, well, what do we do now, Stannis? And he's like,
and I love the whiny soldier who's just like, what? Like the wildfire, hundreds will die, and he says thousands. Stannis knows. Stannis is a war commander. He knows that after what just happened, I took a big hit. And that doesn't stop me from my goal. I need to take that city.
It can't matter, because if I retreat now...
nobody will respect me. I will not have a path to victory at this point. So I must go. And I do like that Stannis leads his men. I like that throughout the rest of this episode, he is fighting up front. He's
on the wall.
He's on the wall. Yeah. Like when he finally has to retreat, he's
being pulled.
He's being pulled from the back. Like, his soldiers back.
He's like, no, so we have to get away.
Yeah. So that's already an awesome moment there for Tyrion because it just kind of shows his prowess. It gives us a little bit more of a look into how scarred the Hound is because as soon as he sees this, all of a sudden, his fears are coming up. Oh my God, that's a lot.
We have no idea at this point about his fear of fire, do we?
I mean, we do that. We know that he had a bad experience with fire because we've heard the story of him and his brother.
What my favorite line from the Hound of all time. They're fighting on the beachfront. He's just done. He busts his way back.
So he
up.
goes out,
like, get back out.
So he goes out to the beach and he's fighting amongst all these people. And one of Stannis's or somebody, I don't even know if
they're on fire.
It's just an unknown soldier is running at him on fire. And it just gives the Hound just this full-on PTSD episode, and he just runs back. He breaks, and he runs back inside the walls. And at this point, I mean, they're suffering some losses. They are not doing well against Stannis' forces. But yes, it leads to one of the greatest lines is that Joffrey's telling the Hound to get back out there. And at this point, the Hound has been pretty loyal to Joffrey with only a couple of moments of like he's trying to be nice to Sansa because he has this soft spot for her. And it just leads to one of the best moments. Fuck the city, fuck the king, fuck Joffrey or whatever the hell he says. Like, but it's just so great because
Joffrey's.
Because that's the other thing. It's such a contrast to when Robert Baratheon was alive. And so it's after the mountain is unseated by Loras Tyrell. Right. And he starts to go and like he's trying to kill Loras because, he cheated or whatever the hell happened during the joust. And the Hound being who he is just standing up to make sure that, his brother's not just killing people randomly like he wants to do. Right. And I love that in the middle of their fight, the Hound has such loyalty to Robert Baratheon that when Robert Baratheon says, "Stop this madness in the name of your king," the Hound drops to his knees, bowing his head on his sword, even as his brother's last swing just missed him.
Just such an epic moment, yeah.
It's so cool.
And to contrast that
with the new king, who has now shown that he doesn't deserve the Hound's loyalty at all.
No.
Is awesome. I love it.
Yeah. The Hound is his own character.
The Hound is his own
he's free
person.
I can't wait to see what he
does. He's
does.
A dog off a leash now. Right. He can go do what he wants.
Right.
And so Tyrion at this point has to make a final stand for the city.
And Joffrey's gone at this point.
Joffrey's left.
He sees that.
His mother has told him to return back to the keep because something is... Yeah. She needs him or something.
So he leaves. The soldiers are all questioning Tyrion. Hey, that's our king. Should we run away too? Our morale is so low. And he gives a great speech.
He gives a great speech. It's not my favorite of the series, but it's still a good speech. Because it's just like, they call me a half man. Well, what does that make the lot of you if I'm willing to charge out there right now? And
he fucking does.
Yeah, he leads them out. And this time he actually gets to lead them, whereas in season 1, which the battle that he gets knocked out in, he actually gets to participate in the books. They had a scene filmed, but budgetary concerns for season 1, they just could not. They could not show it. But so he actually gets to lead them out to the field, and he's doing a really damn good job.
Yeah, for someone who's not supposed to fight, like he's a character that's talk, wise, smart, intelligent. He's not supposed to be there with an axe against armies.
No, he's a tiny dude.
And the guy that gets the hit on him, so mad.
Yeah. So Joffrey had left one of his Kingsguard to represent the king on the battlefield, so he says. But Joffrey had kind of left that Kingsguard with a little message of just like, hey, kill Tyrion for me, will you? The guy slapped me enough times, or called me a vicious idiot, and all these things.
Such a bitch.
Such a bad move. Like, Tyrion complains about it in season 3 to Cersei, but it's such a bad move. And thank God we had Pod the Rod there to save Tyrion from...
Talk about loyalty. Let's talk about Pod.
We'll get to Pod.
I love Pod.
Pod at this point is just, and it's so funny because his name is Podrick Payne. His full name is Podrick Payne. So he is like the nephew or son of Ilyn Payne, the man who killed Ned Stark, the man who took Ned Stark's head.
He's such a happy little boy.
And he's such a kind little soul.
Like you can't.
And he's just a happy little potato that you just don't want to. You don't want to harm him.
You can't point at House Payne and be like, they're bad. Oh, they're good. Oh,
yeah,
they're so the two members we can't decide over.
Yeah.
But so unfortunately Tyrion falls in that moment. We see him later.
Yeah.
But
thankfully that even though he's wounded at that point, it's at a point where he's no longer needed, because at that moment that's when Tywin and the Tyrells come to break the siege.
It's like a band.
We've been wondering what Tywin was going to do, because we'll get to a little bit of Arya's storyline, but from her perspective, he had just left to go and do some fight against the Starks that they weren't aware of.
Right.
But he fooled even her by doubling back, saving King's Landing, and by doing so, taking obviously one of the kings was already off the playing field because of Stannis' own doing, but then by getting rid of Stannis' siege, he has now effectively narrowed it down to only 3 kings in the war, which one of those remaining kings isn't attacking him. He's attacking the Starks.
Right. But in doing so, because this was the big choice for Tywin, in coming to save King's Landing, he left someone else out to dry, correct? He left Jaime out to dry.
Well, no, Jaime was already captured at this point. We'll get to Jaime. Jaime's been captured for the entirety of season 2.
Wasn't there something that he was going to do that he had to not do to come there, or did he not suffer any consequences?
He really didn't suffer any true consequences. He gave up a strategic point at Harrenhal.
That's okay. Yeah, he lost Harrenhal for this.
But he basically torched the place.
Who cares about Harrenhal?
Yeah, exactly. He left it in the Mountain's command, and then the Mountain eventually torches and destroys all the stuff there.
Anyway, he had the loss of that. But
so nothing really.
But he returns,
lost,
and then. And then you have the scene with Cersei on the Iron Throne with Tommen.
So let's talk about Cersei throughout this entire episode. I love her interactions with Sansa and Shae, where the whole time she's just getting more and more drunk, and she's just being more and more honest about being queen, about being who she is, and it's just like, this is
this Tower of Maidens, right?
The hen's nest, as she calls it,
right? And all the guards there aren't to protect them, but to kill them all if they get that close.
Because if they don't, then I suppose we're all in for a bit of a rape, as she said. some of these women might have babies in their bellies come morning. Like,
Right.
just straight up saying this, like, in earshot of all of these women of the court.
They're all around there praying. They're like,
let's pray, let's sing.
She's like, none of that is going to help
to
you.
the seven. My father told me about the gods, and now the gods don't care about us, and all these things. And it's like, okay, Cersei, put your atheist fedora on while you're at it, milady.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Anyway, no, I love that scene because
it tears into who she really is.
It tears, and it's nice because it's not Cersei trying to do that, like, oh, little dove, come here, I'm not, like that manipulation thing she did. She's just straight up open, like.
It's brutal. It's brutal honesty. It's horrific, but it's real. You know, Marjorie's there as well, right?
No,
I'm thinking of Sansa.
Yes,
Sansa's there. Shay's there. And they're just listening to all this.
You don't believe in the gods? Oh, my father told me the gods are a myth or whatever.
And then she near the end of it.
Then she leaves, and she has the essence of Nightshade that was given to her by Pycelle, because Cersei's big thing is, like, she's obviously going to protect her children.
And in this moment, protecting them might mean letting them
die in a way that's not as horrifying or awful.
She knows what's happened to the last children of this place.
Yep.
She knows.
I was going to say, when the Targaryens fell, the mountain raped their mother and bashed the children's heads into the frickin' floor. And it's not a good thing what happens after a siege like that. No. So Cersei has this whole thing where she's just telling a story to her son just to make him feel good. And it seems like she's already kind of drugged him a little bit because he doesn't seem like he's all there.
He might just be super tired,
that
honestly.
Too.
It's late.
That's very true.
His bedtime was a while ago.
I was going to say, it's like 2 a.m. and they're still under siege.
Yeah, and then the very epic entrance. Right when everything
seems hopeless, Tywin Lannister, and like seriously, unironically, Tywin Lannister and Tyrion Lannister are my 2 favorite Lannisters, and they're honestly in my top 5 characters for the entire series.
Yep.
Because Tywin is almost this Machiavellian figure where everything he's doing is for the best of the realm in ways that maybe they don't see, and he thinks that the risks are necessary. And we'll talk about some of his logic in season 3. But I love that scene. It's so epic. His interest of just like, we've won, the battle is over. Yeah. And she had dropped the bottle of Nightshade. Tears. She's just so happy.
Yeah. Probably the only time she's happy to see her father.
Seriously.
Probably the only time. Because they usually have a pretty angry relationship. Stannis goes back to Dragonstone, utterly defeated. Like, both, like, in his heart and in his body, and
in his spirit, because at this point, you know, whether or not he believes...
His brother is dead, right?
He killed
my brother to do this, and this failed, and then I went to and I kept going because I thought maybe... And then Tywin and the Tyrells show up and just crush that. Like, what did I do wrong? And Melisandre has to answer for that, of course, because she's like, well, and he's like, I was. So So he's utterly defeated. Tywin becomes he immediately throws Tyrion off the hand of the king status. Takes it for himself.
Reinstalls Pycelle. Pycelle's no longer in a dungeon after that. And then. Trying to think. So let's backtrack a little bit to Arya. Yeah. Arya at the end of last season, you know, had killed her first victim ever because there was that little boy who was going to go and turn her into the queen, and she had like found needle and accidentally stabs this kid through the belly.
Yeah. Right, her and Gundry's little journey, right?
Well, yeah. So we're getting to. So she joins up with all these Night's Watchmen. Yoren saves her because he at least he likes the Starks.
He recognizes her, right?
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah. When Ned's killed, he says Baelor, which is in reference to where Arya was hiding, which was the statue of Baelor the Blessed, one of the previous kings, which the Sept is named for. And so Yoren goes and finds her, and he says, "Oh, you're a boy now. You got that, boy. You got that." And so he's trying to take her to North. Yoren, I love him so much. Yeah. His death is one of the more sad ones in season 2.
Small but sad. Sad. Yeah. I mean, huge in what he accomplishes by saving Arya, right? And of course, you know, Gendry, of course. But Yoren had a short but a great.
Some great moves by Arya in her own little play the game kind of way to trick people.
And also saves them when the gold coats catch up to them.
Well, that's the thing. Is so Yoren saves them with just some of his own ingenuity of just like, he's got a knife that's ready here, and it's like, it's going to take longer for this guy to draw a sword than for me to draw my little pocket knife and stick it where one of his most important arteries is. If I nick this, nobody here anywhere nearby is going to be able to unnick it. So they steal all of those guys' stuff. And they, trying to sow some discord among the group, they're like, we're looking for a boy named Gendry. Which leads to, Arya thought they were looking for her, and now Gendry knows they're looking for him, and he's like, well, why did you think they were looking for you? Oh, you're not actually a boy. All that stuff. Yoren dies, but in that raid on their camp that night,
saves a couple people in a burning cart.
She saves... Oh, gosh. How could I forget?
Very important person.
How could I forget? Jaqen Hagar. She saves Jaqen Hagar, who is in with two other really bad people. Like, these soon-to-be Night's Watch recruits are so bad they're locked in a cage for most of the journey. But Arya befriends one of them and actually saves all three of them in doing so.
You have saved 3 lives, so I will give you 3 lives.
So, but also, she saves one more in Gendry by being ingenious in that when, I forget the character's name in the show, I know that it's supposed to be Varga Hoat in the actual books. It's a different character. But basically she sees, I believe it was Lami, was the dead body near Gendry's ox helmet. Or his bull helmet.
Right, they put the helmet on the... Yeah, that's right.
And the helmet was on the ground near Lami's dead body.
That was good enough evidence for them.
Yeah, because they were like, we're looking for Gendry. If you don't talk, we'll start killing you or torturing you. Right. And she was like, you want Gendry? You already got him. And she's like, he loved that helmet. Like, and that just gets people off of Gendry for the rest. It's like she saves 4 people's lives in that episode. And then, Jaqen Hagar then joins up with the Lannister soldiers as well as Biter and the other dude. I forget their names. Who cares? Yeah. They are red shirts in later seasons. That's all I can say. But he joins up, and then he starts giving her this offer. Well, I serve the many-faced god. You stole 3 deaths from him, so I will give you 3 deaths in return. That leads to just some really fun stuff. In the books, I really like her mentality because she envisions herself as this... in her mental look at herself, she envisions herself as the Mouse of Harrenhal, where she's going around and she's doing things that get people killed, and she just feels powerful in her own small little ways.
She could have killed some really important people.
Like, straight up, if she really wanted to kill... If she had used one of her kills on Tywin Lannister, that would have...
Changed everything.
Altered the course of the show, for sure. Right. She's the cupbearer to Roose Bolton, if I recall, in the books.
In the books. Well, for that, she was cupbearer to Tywin.
Yeah, right? But in the show, she's cupbearer to Tywin, which led to a great interaction between them. I love when she's...
I like the dance they do. Of, like, he's looking for her, and he has her right there, and he has no clue.
Yeah.
And yet... she's able to get,
And she keeps on trying to act like she's some commoner.
Yeah, and he clearly knows she's not, but he's also like, she's not anyone that important.
Yeah, and she was like, commoners, and he says, commoners say my lord, not my lord. You say my lord. You're highborn, I know it. You're from the north. Like, he figures out so much about her, but he almost has this genuine care for her.
Which is so strange.
It's so strange, and I love it.
It's probably like he wished his own daughter was like this.
Yeah. I never wanted to be like the pretty princesses I always cared about, Nymeria and the dragons.
Well, and I honestly don't think that Tywin ever wanted to see like Ned killed. I think that was clearly...
No, that was the thing. In the last season, that's one of the other reasons he put Tyrion in the position he did. Is because when they're all talking about what they need to do to like sue for peace with Robb Stark and all that stuff, Tyrion knocks over that wine glass and he says, "There's your peace. That's what Joffrey gave you by chopping off Ned Stark's head." And it's like, yeah.
No. Tywin's smart enough to know that Ned was an important role. And
Yeah.
Joffrey ruined
If he was going to be killed, he was going to be killed not in the way he was killed.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
So
yeah, she makes her way around Harrenhal.
Yeah.
She uses her 3 deaths.
Which the funny thing is, so she technically gets more than 3 because so the first one she gets is the Tickler, and then the second one was one of Tywin's guys who finds out
Discovered something about her.
Yeah, so she had stolen a piece of intel that she was going to try and get to Rob or somebody.
Right.
And he finds her with this piece of intel, and he's like, oh, I'm going to go tell on you. And she's like, Jaqen, please kill him quick.
Which
and,
is,
like,
yeah.
he literally gets, like, a poison dart or something in his neck and falls over in front of Tywin, which then Tywin, like, starts a whole search of what the hell's going on in my camp.
Right. And then the last one...
And then she was going to use it on him, but then he leaves for what we think is an attack on the Starks, but we later find out is him breaking King's Landing.
And she then uses that favor instead to save the 3 of their lives getting out of Harrenhal, correct?
So Jaqen basically kills, like, all the guardsmen to make it impossible for them to find out that, like, they left. Right. So... And then he gives her a trinket.
And says, if you're ever in...
Bravos,
these are the words you say. You present this coin.
And then... it leads to one of my favorite phrases. And we don't know truly what this phrase means yet. It's Vala Morghulis.
Yeah, I knew it was something with a V, Morghulis, yeah.
Yep.
Vala Morghulis.
And that is...
And then there's the answer to it, correct?
Yes.
The answer to it.
So the phrase in the common tongue is, all men must die, all men must serve.
Right.
So, Vala Morghulis, Vala de Hydes. Which I think is super cool.
And then he goes off and looks back as a different person, and you're like, whoa!
Another thing of magic here.
Magic! And then she continues on her journey, I think in the next season, or does she have a bit more?
No, at this point they are just heading north.
Yeah.
And it's her, Gendry, and Hot Pie.
And we'll get into Boros, right?
Thoros.
That's where he comes in.
Thoros and why did I just forget his name? No, not the Hound.
Oh, the guy who keeps coming back, right?
Beric Dondarrion.
Beric Dondarrion.
Which we saw him briefly in season 1, but he was a different actor, and he hadn't gone through the shit he has gone through by the time we meet him.
Right.
Okay. And then I think to bring this to an end, we're going to just quickly touch on my least favorite character for this season. Daenerys Targaryen. I hate season 2 for Daenerys Targaryen.
Yeah.
Her season 1 arc was so compelling and so great.
So much happening.
So much good stuff happening to her. Like
obviously
obviously some bad stuff, and then
some really bad
some
stuff.
good stuff, and then some bad stuff.
Some really bad
and
stuff.
then she's left with dragons, which is good stuff.
Oh, baby dragon.
But she's got to go and survive the Red Waste desert.
Yeah. Which is just a whole lot of, are we there yet? No. Send someone that way.
And
Did
a
you
lot
find
of,
anything? No.
And a lot of her being tense to Jorah for reasons I really don't like.
Yeah, we all like Jorah.
Because at this point she doesn't even know that he was a spy for Varys.
Can we even talk about Jon in this season?
Oh, God! We'll end with my favorite character.
Yeah.
He's not my favorite character in this season.
Daenerys did some stuff, but she was in a desert.
Daenerys
just took a
was
while.
in a desert. She went to a city that I don't care about. It's hard to pronounce. Quarth.
I like the big guy with the treasure chest. That was kind of cool.
I mean, he seemed cool, and they find out that he's
not that
poor.
cool.
He's poor as shit.
Yeah.
She yells at people. She does her whole Targaryen thing, fire and blood.
The dragons are cute. They get stolen.
Yeah.
She gets it back.
And Jorah screams Khaleesi a lot.
Yeah, Khaleesi! Yeah, we love Jorah. Because of who he's connected to, because we find out of the Mormonts, and the Mormonts are great, and we're going to go to the Wall.
Yeah, let's go to the Wall.
Let's go to the Wall to end this. We're going to the Wall.
End of last season. So let's end with Jon Snow instead. I at least like Jon Snow a bit more in this season. Season 1, I don't like Jon Snow. Season 2, I like Jon Snow. Yeah. Because at the end of last season, we didn't really talk about it. At the end of last season, there was a White. One of the White Walkers' dead underlings. A White was brought beyond the Wall.
Yes.
And now normally, if a White itself tries to pass under the Wall, they just die. Right. But if they're brought under the Wall, it forgoes the magic that's put into the Wall.
Magic doesn't work if people let you in. Vampire logic.
It's a vampire logic. So one of the whites is brought under the wall, and he attacks Lord Commander Mormont in his study, which, thank God, Jon was around to throw a lantern at him and burn the body, yada yada.
Yeah. You're going to be okay, Mormont, for now.
Yeah. You're good for now, man. You're good for now.
Yes.
So he decides, I'm taking the fight to the White Walkers. So he empties Castle Black, basically, and takes about, I want to say the party was 200 from Castle Black, and then they meet up with another 100 from Eastwatch.
Yeah. I think,
or the Shadow Tower.
I think something like that, yeah.
But so eventually the party has about 300 men of the Night's Watch.
Heading into the
into the unknown of the Land of Always Winter. And so we meet Craster at the beginning of this season, and he is just a bastard. Literally and figuratively. Craster is one of the worst things, but he is a somewhat shaky ally of the Watch.
I mean, he's a solid ally. He just doesn't want
He's
to
a shaky ally.
lives.
He's a shaky ally.
He's got his
At
rules.
best.
He's got his rules.
He's got his
rules.
rules.
You don't break rules, you're fine.
Yep. You don't break his rules.
I mean, Mormont trusts him, which means you can trust him, right?
For the most part.
I mean, he doesn't do any. I mean, let's be honest.
But the thing is, when you find out more about Craster and how basically his gods, as he calls them, are literally the White Walkers, it frustrates me to think that Craster knows that he sacrifices his sons to his gods. And by all means, Mormont might not know that literally the White Walkers are turning these babies into more of them.
Yeah, I don't think he knows that. I think he knows that if I leave a boy there, like whenever I have one, cool. But I get to keep my daughters, which is really the sick thing that he likes.
It's his daughter wives, yes.
Yeah.
It's very gross.
But he leaves his sons out. He gets safe. He's in it for himself. He's safe.
Yeah.
He doesn't care if people come through every now and then.
He's the ruler of his own little kingdom in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. And no one bugs him.
And nobody bugs him.
Nobody bugs him.
Wildlings, White Walkers, Night's Watch. Nobody bugs him.
Nobody bugs Craster.
Because the White Watch,
the White Watch!
The Night's Watch needs him too much.
Yeah.
So, and then we meet Corn Halfhand, which he's a legendary figure to Jon within the Watch itself, because he's been a ranger for a long time. He's kind of insane. He's done some things that...
Oh, yeah.
That are just...
He's really a book character, though. You can't go too much...
No, I can't go too much into him for the show's purposes.
Which is a shame, because he really is legendary.
Because he's a legendary figure within the Night's Watch itself by their standards, because he's spent winters beyond the wall. He's been a ranger for quite some time.
Yeah.
And he's one of Mance Rayder's greatest foes when it comes to being the man who is trying to unite all of the wildling clans. Yeah. Corn Halfhand has killed many, many wildlings. He's legendary even among them. Right. But so Jon helps go with Corn Halfhand with a couple of other people, and I'm every time I say his name, I say it the way wildlings say it. Because they have their, northern accent for Corn Halfhand.
Corn Halfhand.
You crows.
Right.
So Jon goes with Corn Halfhand to help scout ahead, and he meets Ygritte.
He meets someone.
He meets a red-headed girl, which, we kind of found out from his conversation with Sam in last season that he has a thing for redheads.
He does, yeah.
He's got a thing for redheads.
What's that lady's name in the...
Roz.
Yeah,
Roz.
Yeah.
And she was a show-only character, but that it was still a compelling piece of trivia about Jon, is that he has a thing for redheads. And he meets Ygritte.
Hates wildlings. Ygritte's kind of attractive. Oh, what to do?
Right?
What to do?
And so, through circumstances, he becomes bound to this person because he gets lost from the rest of his brothers. Right. And he is basically attached to this wildling that he refused to kill.
Refuses. Won't do it.
He wouldn't do it.
Why?
Who knows?
Something's going on there. I don't know.
But through fate, she basically starts to win him over. And then at one point when she gets away from him, because she's no longer his prisoner, eventually she makes him her prisoner.
Oh, yes.
Because she sneaks away and gets some wildlings. And
Jon likes that.
He totally likes that. So and then
he starts to play double agent, right?
Yeah. So what happens then is he is now captured And Corin Halfhand, you find out, was also captured.
Right.
And they were the only two from their scouting party. The other two, they just killed them because they weren't anybody. They were
Some red
nobody.
shirts.
They were red shirts. So Corin Halfhand and John get into it, and he's just like, you need to do what you need to do to make sure that the watch survives or whatever. And so he starts faking this fight with John, and eventually John kills Corin Halfhand, whether by Corin just totally fixing the fight in his favor, which, I mean, either way, he wanted John to kill him, but I don't know how much of an effort he was making.
I don't think John wanted to, and I think he had to do it.
No, for sure.
What
I'm saying is I don't know how convincing Corin was trying to make it. Right. Because either way, he's dead. He just needs to make sure that Mance Rayder and the rest of the wildlings trust John.
And at the end of it, they do. That's the ultimate thing.
That's the thing.
That's the tagline.
They take his bindings off, and they start heading towards it. And by the final scene we have for that particular plot line is you see the camp of all the wildlings, and it looks huge off in the distance. And we don't get to the camp until season 3. Right. But I still just love Corin's final lines. It's literally just for the watch. Like,
he's a legendary figure.
He's a legendary figure,
gets back to them.
And he literally gave his life in service of this organization that he treasured above everything.
Yeah, Corin Halfhand, so much cooler in the books, as many characters are.
Yeah, no, for sure. But I think they did him a good service.
With the amount of screen time that they had for him.
With what they had for him, I think the actor who did Corin Halfhand did a very, like I said, every time, I can't help it.
No, that's a good way to say it. It's kind of legendary.
Yeah, so I think the actor who did that was very good.
Yeah.
Our last point on the watch, they had found some obsidian daggers, which you're just kind of like, whoa, that's kind of weird.
Oh, obsidian daggers, that's kind of cool.
Some obsidian daggers.
Kind of metal.
And then later, you see good old Dolorous Ed, which this was his first season. If I recall, I actually think he came from the Eastwatch group, or he was with the Castle Black group, and he just didn't really make an appearance until this season. But you see good old Dolorous Ed, you see Gren, and Sam. And they're, off digging trenches or whatever the hell they need to do for their duties for that day.
Yeah.
And this, and then one of the horns sounds. And they hear one blast. One blast for rangers returning. 2 blasts for wildlings. They're like, okay. Second blast, they draw their swords and they're like, okay, well, looks like we're going to have to fight. And then a third blast comes. And the third blast is for others. White Walkers. And Gren and Ed run. They scream, run. And poor, fat, soft Sam is running for his life as a blizzard starts coming in.
Just
takes over the entire area he's in.
He's calling out. He can't find anyone. He doesn't know what
he hides behind this rock.
Oh, yeah, I know this scene.
And then all of a sudden, this horse hoof comes. And you think it's a normal horse at first. And then as the camera pans up, it's such excellent cinematography. The build-up for this moment is fantastic. Yeah. When you see that it's an undead horse with a rider that is
true White Walker.
A true White Walker with his icy spear and his blue devilish eyes. And he looks around and he sees Sam. He sees Sam.
Oh, he sees
I
Sam.
Still, to this day, do not know how Sam got out of this. I don't necessarily need to know.
First time Sam should have died.
This is truly one of the first times Sam should be dead.
So dead.
Because at this point, the White Walker sees him. And the White Walker points forward as all of his undead legions are behind him. And he points towards the Fist of the First Men, where all the Night's Watch are camping out, hiding out. And he points them onward for the attack.
Oh,
and as it's panning back, because you see the Fist of the First Men, and you just start to see all of these undead behind you. And I mean, this isn't even close to the amount that eventually it gets to. But this is the first glimpse of something so terrifying. It's shot like a horror movie. It's shot like an episode of The
It is
Walking
horrific,
Dead.
dude.
It's so horrific.
And you got little Sam there.
And the whole time you're thinking, Sam is fucking
He's
dead.
so dead. So dead.
And that
But he's not.
is how we left season 2. And it is fantastic.
Yeah, so season 2...
I almost wish I had been watching from the beginning, and I wish that had been one of the cliffhangers I was left on. I truly believe that. I wish I had been left with no relief from that moment.
Oh, like you wish there wasn't like...
No. I'm saying, because I watched, when I started watching, they were about to start season 5.
Oh.
So for me, super easy. I just go to the next episode.
Right.
I wish
Right,
I had been watching back in 2012
You had to
or
wait however long it would
2013.
take for the new season
I
to come
wish
out.
I had literally left myself on a cliffhanger.
Oh.
Because
Yeah.
for that, to leave off on that would have been fantastic. So,
Yeah.
with that being said, we will... If there were any things we missed about season 2... that
There's probably plenty.
There's plenty that we missed because you can't just focus on any one thing.
Yeah.
Obviously, I had to flip out with so many different characters that we all care about. And thankfully, as the seasons go, some of those characters die off, so it makes it a little easier for us to focus on things.
Focus on essentials.
But stick around for episode 3, where we will talk about season 3, and we might get into some of the stuff we missed in season 2 episode, or even season 1. At this point, I'm just doing it in a way that we reflect on the narrative as a whole. But we will talk about...
We'll centralize it to the season, but we'll jump in and out as we need to. But we'll keep that main each episodes each season.
But with that being said, stay tuned for next episode, season 3, which by far I think is one of my personal favorite seasons for dialogue, character arcs, and plot developments. So stick around, and as always, please hit that like, subscribe button, ring that bell if you feel like it, follow us on all our socials, and
Boise Bros Official.
And we will see you either for the next episode of GoT Perspectives, or hopefully soon another episode of Houses and Hobbits. Thanks, everybody.
Peace.
Peace.